Hello and welcome to Show Studio's live panel discussions. In these discussions, experts from all parts of the fashion industry discuss and debate the most important Fashion Week shows of the season. Today, in the midst of New York Fashion Week, we're going to be discussing Nensi Dojaka's Spring-Summer 22 collection as images come in live from her show. And we'll also be talking about lingerie as fashion. My name is Zooey Gleaves. I am the head of fashion and beauty at Is Studio, and I am a creative director, DJ, drag queen. And I am joined by an incredible selection of panelists today. We have Louis, Alexandra, and Catherine. So without further ado, maybe you guys should introduce yourselves, starting with Louis.
Hi, I'm Louis Pisano. I am a creative and a journalist and fashion commentator based in Paris, France.
Catherine?
Yep. Hi, I'm Catherine Fuller. I'm course leader of BA Fashion Contour at London College of Fashion. I was Nensi's design shooter, and it's just great the news this week of her winning the LVMH Prize. We're really so proud of her. And you'll see lots of contouring elements in her collection on the catwalk.
Alexandra?
Hello, my name is Alexandra. I'm head of buying at KM20 Moscow. We are the only store in Russia who is selling Nensi Dojaka, so we are very proud of it.
Okay, so I suppose until we get some images from the catwalk in, which we can discuss directly, I think it would be really good, first of all, to talk about what we think initially of Nensi's work. Now, Catherine and Alexandra, you guys sound like fans, so maybe first I'll go to Louis. How long have you been following Nensi's work, and what do you make of it up until this point?
Well, I was first made aware of Nensi's work. It was last fall, I think, the VMAs, when those images of Bella Hadid going in, wearing the, I want to say fall/winter 20, filming the VMAs, and she was wearing that incredible sort of mesh top with the piping, and I was just like, okay, this is really this is really cool. It's really like, you know, a sexy stepping out look, and that's when I first started to follow her work.
Okay, and Alexandra, I'm quite interested, obviously from your perspective as a buyer, one of the things that I'm always interested in discussing when speaking to buyers about designers is who is the customer for Nensi. So at the store which you work at, when people are buying Nensi, are they kind of giving a specific reason as to why? And what does this customer look like?
Actually, as the most of our clients are Russian women, so when they found out for themselves Nensi, when we introduced Nensi to our clients, they were very happy that this sexiest outfits came back to the stores and to fashion. They are a bit like annoyed by all those oversized looks, so they want to show their bodies, but like in a very smart, intelligence way. So I think for them, Nensi Dojaka's dresses and suits are the best way to express their like femininity, as I can say.
And Catherine, obviously you were her tutor, so you must have been following her collections for some time since she started showing. What have you made of her trajectory since her first shows with Fashionista? What have you made of the work?
I just think her work just grows and develops season by season. I think one of the strengths is where she counterpoints sheer and opaque fabrics, so that she's enhancing bodycon features, just the thought processes that go into actually creating the designs, the pattern construction. It's just such complex pattern manipulations that she does, but she always gets great fit. I mean, that's one of the things we pride ourselves on. The course is teaching our students how to really make things fit and work on different body types. So I can see her influences just really developed since she was a student. I mean, she did her final collection in 2017, which is the year she launched her brand. And it's just become more and more sophisticated, more and more wearable. She's using a wider range of fabrics now. And I think one of the great things about the LVMH Prize now is it's going to give her the opportunity to actually perhaps develop into knitwear and other elements to really complement her collection, which is fantastic news because she's got plenty more ideas yet to come.
So I really wanted to get into this whole idea of, I suppose, like a kind of like a democratic approach to streetwear, because I feel like for quite a long period of time, streetwear was perhaps considered one thing and one thing only, and it was maybe sort of like hype brands, or it was like, you know, or a certain fit. And I feel like what we have seen more and more of, and, you know, and this can be anything from kind of watching the Pretty Little Thing adverts before Love Island to watching, you know, kind of like the Bella Hadids of the world kind of walking down the street, which is incorporating different aspects or kind of like different clothes that were previously seen as maybe just lingerie or just sportswear or just shapewear into a streetwear wardrobe. And so to me now it feels like clothes that were kind of before partitioned are now kind of creeping in and kind of are kind of being used and mixed together. I was thinking about this in terms especially of, you know, someone like Princess Diana famously wearing a pair of cycling shorts with that big sweater, which has now been the most memed thing throughout the whole of September, as it's like the September outfit du jour, thank God. So I wondered what we thought about kind of mixing these things, mixing lingerie into streetwear, and how important we thought it was that these things were kind of like being mixed together, and whether Nensi kind of has contributed to that in any way, and whether we kind of see a difference from this moment and before.
I think her vision, I actually fished out her proposal for her final year collection this morning just to have a look at it. And her ambition was for women to be able to wear something really quite overtly sexy, but just pair it with a pair of jeans or throw a jacket over it so that they could just go, you know, straight out from work and just be a superstar and just walk in and just burn everybody's heads as they walk into the room. So that was her vision, and I think she's really accomplishing it.
Yeah, for sure.
She's quite versatile in the way that she, you know, manipulates fabrics and how the things can be worn. They can, you know, they can give a very elevated luxe look, but at the same time, they can give a very athleisure, you know, like Bella, you know, popping out of the, you know, for a paparazzi walk.
Yeah. Alexandra?
Yeah, so for us also, and for me, it's very important that you have this feeling that you didn't dress up. So you just put the one piece and you look amazing. And that's true that the fit is perfect, and also like the quality, because like the fabrics are very fragile, but at the same time, so they are very strong, and you don't need to be afraid that something goes wrong whenever you are.
I did, as I was kind of doing my research ahead of the panel, one of the things that I was told was that the straps were adjustable on a lot of the garments.
Yeah,
and obviously, when the clothes have been presented thus far, I feel like they have been seen on more of kind of like a singular sort of body type. However, and this is obviously a critique leveled at quite a lot of fashion, but I feel like especially when it comes to things as sensual and as bodycon as this, we've seen other brands, Chromat comes to mind as a really fabulous example of making things like swimwear, like lingerie, which is purposefully made and shown on the catwalk in a variety of body types that otherwise wouldn't be seen. As of yet, and perhaps if we see some images of the show, we might see some models who perhaps might be fuller figured or kind of like differently figured. I wonder, does anybody have any experience with the clothes firsthand and how adjustable they are? And do we think that Nensi as designer would benefit from showing her garments on a variety of different body shapes in order to show that versatility?
I think she's confident enough to do it. When people think about adjustable straps, they think clunky and bulky and ugly, but actually you can do it in really subtle, understated ways. She actually produces adjustable fit by having the rouleau straps, so you can cross them, adjust them, lace them, and so it's really subliminal, and you can just do your own thing. But also when she does have adjusters, they are really, really fine, and you hardly notice them, and that's the whole point. You don't want it to be obvious that it's adjustable, but it just is, and it's intrinsic in her design process.
Like, that's so interesting to me, because I didn't even know that you know, the designs were adjustable, because when you think about the brand communication, there is pretty much a singular type of body type that's being presented as in the ideal sort of Nensi Dojaka girl. You don't really see anything other than that. And even when you go on shops that stock the designs, you really don't see anything on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like, I've seen triple XL, XS, I think, or double XS, I think, and nothing above a large. And to find out that the things are adjustable, that they can be adapted to women with different shaped bodies was news to me. And I wish that in the communication of the brand or even the placements that they would start to lean more into that. And I think that they would really find a whole new customer.
Our store, we bought like the sizes from S to L because we know that there are a lot of like draping materials. All those like light transparent organza can like drape the part of the body that, for example, is difficult for someone, or so that's why it's easy to sell this product to different women.
Okay, I suppose as well, going back to that idea of lingerie as fashion, we've seen it done in kind of in a variety of different guises. Obviously, kind of Gaultier comes to mind as somebody who's done it famously and kind of very successfully. Think about people like Tom Ford at Gucci, who obviously kind of like showcased the sensuality in that way. And, you know, like I said, Chromat before. But then also thinking about, you know, forgive me, but people like Victoria's Secret as well, who, you know, did it in a kind of like in another way. Obviously, Nensi's vision is a lot more refined, one could argue, and it's also a lot more sophisticated. What do we make of Nensi's vision and this specific vision of lingerie as fashion now? What do we think it's saying about how women want to dress in comparison to perhaps how they did before? Or do we think that this is a way that women have always wanted to look, and Nensi has just kind of opened the door for that to be a possibility?
I think she's really made women feel more confident about wearing sort of semi-sheer clothing because she's very subtle about which elements of the body are exposed. And as Alex is saying, you know, she's really aware of, you know, there's certain elements of perhaps an older customer that has a fantastic figure, but is a little bit more aware of maybe her upper arms. And so a lot of Nensi's designs do have really lovely sleeves or sleeve drapes. She's really conscious about accentuating the positives and sort of disguising some of the possibly more negative perceived elements of a woman's body. She's really clever at that.
And also it's like a throwback to 2000 when like women more, like the style was more open. So with all those crop tops and low waist jeans. So now everything is coming back. So we see this tendency now, and Nensi translated where it's very like elegant.
I feel like Nensi's really, really dialed into sort of the cultural zeitgeist right now and what's happening on the internet and how people want to dress for Instagram and TikTok. They want to be sexy. They want to be eye-catching. They want, you know, an outfit that just looks great and ready to shoot.
Well, off the back of this, actually, I suppose, and kind of thinking about kind of like being very much a designer in the zeitgeist and being a designer of the moment. And again, forgive me, I know I mentioned Pretty Little Thing earlier, and we'll continue to do so throughout the duration of the panel. Because obviously I feel like we see, especially with clothing which is neutral or is in nude tones, and especially a lot of fashion which is fashion as lingerie or lingerie as fashion, or clothing that kind of cross-pollinates the two. We see a lot of those designers being kind of ripped off or having their clothes kind of remade on the high street. And I wonder, for a designer like Nensi, who it feels like the entire backbone of her brand is this look and is this vibe, do we see a longevity in her brand, bearing in mind that there is such a thirst for this type of fashion, but at a much lower price point? So do we see her kind of continuing to kind of go along with her brand language as it is so far? Or do we think that she's the sort of designer who might be able to pivot and kind of change direction, so to kind of, you know, to keep everything feeling fresh?
I think she's really got the confidence and ability to do that. In terms of it being ripped off by a really difficult combination of fabrics, the average factory would really struggle to get production quality up to the sort of level that Nensi achieves. I mean, she's meticulous about the quality of the production of her garments, and it's not easy to combine those fabrics. It takes real skill to produce those really, really fine rouleau straps. It takes a lot of skill. It needs, you know, really good quality manufacturing units to actually make these things. She will, if Nensi, when she was a student, she had a very low boredom threshold. Let's put it like that. I remember having a tutorial with her in second year, and I said, Nensi, the problem with you is you're thinking like a master's student now, but you need to get your bachelor's first, darling, or else you're not going anywhere. So I used to tease her about that, but she always had such a lot of ideas. I mean, if she wanted to change complete direction in her next collection, she might, but I think she'd be foolish to do that. She's got such a strong handwriting, but each collection, each season, she develops it. She turns very subtle little elements and just it goes off in slightly different directions and tests things in her new collections. I'd love to see her doing some swimwear, actually. I think she would do a fantastic cruise collection. You know, those customers that love her clothing during the day, you know, I'm sure they would love to pack a Nensi swimsuit and a fantastic robe and go off on their travels. And just, you know, yeah, I think that's a great way that she could expand the brand as well.
Yeah, I'm totally in, because we really need like a swim line from Nensi, because Nensi gave one swim suit to the owner of the store, to Olga Karput, the influencer. And once Olga posted on the Instagram her photo on the Nensi swimsuit. So we had many requests from the clients that they really need this fantastic swimwear.
Louis, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I definitely agree. I feel like, again, she's very dialed into the moment, and I think she'll know when it's time to shift away from one moment to the next.
Mm-hmm. So I think, and you mentioned as well, obviously, Bella Hadid kind of wearing that top and trousers combo in a picture that kind of felt semi-viral. And to me, that kind of exemplified Nensi kind of having more of kind of like a global reach than kind of previously just being seen on the catwalk of Fashion East. Now, obviously, Fashion East turned 20, I believe it was this year, at the end of last year, and has been responsible for the careers of, I mean, however many designers at this point, becoming incredibly successful. And really recently, it feels like they've dialed in a kind of a transatlantic way and being able to kind of dress popular American women in these up and coming London brands. So before we kind of get more into Nensi, I just wondered from your perspective, what you make of the Fashion East machine and what you kind of make of it, kind of giving platforms to young designers, considering the fact that his 20th birthday has just gone. And is there anything from that? Obviously, they show such a kind of a wide and diverse range of designers. Is there anything or anybody you would like to see in that specific platform who you think would really benefit and would really make incredible work?
I think it's been a fantastic showcase for up and coming designers, because it's given them the opportunity to not have to go the real commercial route. They've been able to stay true to their vision, to their beliefs, their inspiration. It's just, 20 years. I can't believe it's 20 years. May it go on for another 40.
Sorry, is my head crossing? Sometimes that can be a little distracting. Okay, good. Are the catwalk images ready? Do we have some that we can take a look at from the collection yet? Or shall I ask another question? Okay, so yeah, as we were talking about Bella and kind of Bella wearing that top and trousers combo, and it made me think about how kind of 20, 30 years ago, kind of like the leading kind of pop cultural women of the moment would be wearing designers like Gaultier, Alaya. There was like a group of designers who really came to exemplify who the kind of top, sexy kind of cutting edge designers were. Obviously, when you kind of look at someone like Hailey Bieber or Bella or Adwoa kind of wearing a Nensi top, it feels like she might be the same. Do we kind of see Nensi, even though the brand is quite young, do we see Nensi as being one of those designers who is already kind of establishing a pop cultural legacy? Or has the capacity to do so if she kind of keeps on the track that she is currently?
I think now she's got this extra support, she's going to be able to bounce ideas off more people. And I think that's actually going to stimulate more progress for her. I mean, obviously at the moment, she's running a very tight operation. And one of the things is when you're the design director, but you're worrying about everything else and production schedules and things like that, it sometimes does impinge on your time for creative thinking and creative freedom. So I actually think this opportunity that has happened in this last week really going to give Nensi the time to actually really focus about where she wants to take the brand, and whether she wants to do brand extensions or whatever, and give her the opportunity to really think about where she's going.
And from buyer's perspective, so once Nensi can fix and finalize her production, her commercial team, so everything will grow faster, because for us it's very important to have the clothes as in delivery window and as early as possible, so to have them in store as long as possible before the sale. So once Nensi have a great support, I mean financial support and resources support, so she has everything to grow the strong brand.
I agree.
For me, I definitely want to sort of see what she does the next few seasons, because as someone that's very much in the social media space, trends change so fast, and we don't know how long the staying power is going to be. I mean, are we going to be talking about in the next decade that, Nensi Dojaka is one of those sort of defining designers of the 2020s, So definitely I want to see how she evolves her brand.
Also, I think it's important to note that, and some of the brands I mentioned earlier, people like Gaultier or even Agent Provocateur are kind of brands that, even though they were making lingerie for women, it was very much from a male perspective, be it a gay male perspective or otherwise still very much male. Obviously, Nensi is coming at kind of making lingerie and making women's fashion very much from a female perspective and for women and for femmes. And so I wonder, how important is that? Is this one of the things that you think makes her work so attractive and makes her kind of her customer base and her fans so ravenous? Do you think in part the reason why she's so successful is because she is a woman designer and she's making things that are this sensual? And do you think that only really a woman designer can make things this sensual and kind of this specific for the body? Or could a male designer, a masculine designer, make this too?
Well, we've actually started to have male applicants onto our contour course, and they are, I tell you what, watch out for them. In a couple of years' time when they start graduating, you're going to see some really amazing lingerie designed by men for women, but also for other men. It's been interesting. The course traditionally was all girls. We had our first male student 5 years ago on the course, but his final collection was actually a menswear based collection. But we've got three coming into second year now, and they'll be graduating either next year or the year after. So it'll be really interesting to see whether they start making a mark on this kind of crossover market for lingerie and daywear.
But I have to add into that, where, Nensi is doing something that's very fresh and very now. There's also in that space, we have people like Casey at Mugler, and we have Laquan Smith as well. I don't really want to compare all of them, but I feel like the clientele is sort of the same. The kind of woman who wants something that can be dressed up and dressed down at the same time and be very sexy and show the body.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I also wanted to mention Mugler because now in our store we have almost one of the best-selling brands. We have Nensi Dojaka, Mugler, and Charlotte Knowles. So three of them are almost on the same this sexy area, all cool and young, and they are absolutely best-selling. So women need this.
Oh, and I'm gonna add one more to that, Louisa Ballou.
Fabulous. And I wonder, because so much of this, I feel also as well, a lot of the women's wear, which is currently being made right now, is not only being made by men, but is also influenced by what we're currently kind of seeing. And I would argue that kind of the rise in interest in cosmetics and also the rise in interest in drag culture. And I feel especially in America, kind of coming out of the Trump presidency, there seems to be a real return to male designers specifically making clothes for women that feel very heightened, very costumey, very loud, and very full colored and very high concept. I mean, thinking about Christopher John Rogers, who's a lot of his clothes were recently kind of seen at the Met, but then obviously thinking about people, kind of like Jeremy Scott, etc. The designers that we just mentioned, Charlotte and Casey at Mugler, as well as Nensi, are making clothes that feel in a way diametrically opposed to that kind of philosophy behind women's dressing. Do you kind of see one prevailing over another? Do I think when we look back on this period of time, I know we were already thinking about kind of how Nensi might be perceived, but in general, I suppose, if we're to kind of flash forward 20 years and look back at the start of the 2020s or the late teens, how do we think we're going to perceive how women dressed during this time? And will there, do you think, be kind of one kind of like key note, or do you think it's going to be a kind of a diverse range?
I think for me, it's going to be a very diverse range. I kind of look at it as like the 90s. There were these two like diametrically opposite scales of what opulent dressing was. You know, you had the very sort of like helmet laying and that kind of mood. And then you had, you know, all of the sort of like, you know, Tom Ford in the 90s kind of, you know. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like there's always going to be in this space room to have this sort of spectrum of dressing.
Anybody else? Anything to add? Okay, I'll quickly check in again to see if we have any footage from the show that we can take a look at. Yes, should we take a look at some videos? Okay, fab. There's some videos of the show, so maybe we should get into these. And if anybody has any thoughts, just say, and we can kind of dissect as we go. I should have done like a stand-up course or something so I could have really like filled in the gaps. Here we go. Okay. Already, one of the things that comes to mind about this, you know, thinking about sensuality, is the way that that tie is done on the upper leg, really kind of making the eye, you know, zone in so fiercely on that super erogenous kind of part of the thigh. Do you think, Catherine, that's just kind of like, does that exemplify kind of Nensi's aesthetic and kind of like her thought process when she's creating a garment?
Absolutely, yeah. It's she just thinks about little areas that are just going to attract the attention of the eye, draw the eye to certain areas of the body. She's always had a very good sense of humor, so there's always a certain element of whimsy in her collections as well. So it's quite fun to see that.
It's interesting how like Nensi is bringing back to life the tights, because like I think a few years people like stopped wearing tights at all, and now with Nensi everyone wants to wear tights, even like during the summer and during like hot time. And it's a cool accessory.
Yeah, before it was seen as super dated and, you know, something your mother or your grandmother would.
True.
Now it's very, very sexy.
Mm. Or is this the finale? One of the things I did want to talk about as well is obviously she's been so far, I mean, I'm seeing a couple that kind of look like a tan, and before that maybe sort of like a dusty pink, but she doesn't really use very much color.
No.
And she likes to stick to black and nudes. Simply from like a taste perspective, I'm interested. I'm personally somebody who likes to wear a lot of color and a lot of print. So I remember when I first saw Nensi's show for Fashion East, my first gut instinct was, forgive me, but it was like a slight disappointment, simply because my personal taste is for things that are, you know, slightly louder. I wonder, what do you make of this kind of reduction in kind of color and print, and how do you think it best serves what she's trying to say and what she's trying to do?
I think she's always really favoured just a really understated and really subtle colour palettes. You know, black was always her favourite colour, and sometimes, you know, I used to say, well, you know, what happens if your customer doesn't like it? You know, have you thought about some other colours and get her to do some colour palette work? But I think her colour palette work and it's always really subtle, it's really sophisticated. She, you know, with so much construction going on, I think if you started adding print to it, you would lose that sort of clarity of design. Having said that, you know, we were talking about swimwear. Maybe if she did a swimwear range, maybe that's where she might start adding in print and so forth, just to give it a different dimension. But she's been super, super understated, and it's just her.
Also, I feel like she's very, very smart not to do patterns, because it's very now, but black is also very timeless. And if she adds in a print at this moment, I feel like people will associate that print with right now. Whereas in a couple of years, people may want to move on to something different. But having, you know, this little black dress with, you know, this amazing sort of structure in it is always going to be something that's going to be wearable.
Also, like with this design that is quite open, sometimes too sexy. So black is a very like safe color. I mean, to make it elegant and yeah.
Especially, I mean, I'm trying to see, I mean, I'm currently sitting and craning my neck over, but there does seem to be, I mean, that could have even been a print on the top. And I suppose, yeah, I mean, I suppose one of the things is that when you do a collection with so much of a kind of like of the similar tone, and again, you could say the same about Mugler, is that like when color is shown, it feels kind of very direct and very important. And, you know, kind of like, is quite refreshing. Whereas if you're going to do something which is kind of saturated in color, perhaps not as much. So it actually feels very deliberate. And like you said, very sophisticated.
Although I do find it really strange as someone who's very much like in the moment. Why is she not live streaming it on her Instagram?
Okay. Well, I mean, I suppose that's a very good question. I mean, I wonder, like, I suppose I'd kind of have to pick her brains a little bit more on her own. Pardon?
Or even on TikTok, because, you know, TikTok is sort of sponsoring this space that she's showing in. And it would really like speak directly to, you know, that demographic.
Well, I mean, I wonder whether that sort of demographic is one that she would want to kind of connect with directly, or whether it's something that she's benefiting from kind of like a second or third sort of, do you know what I mean? Like say, for instance, I mean, again, not to kind of bring it back to trashy pop cultural references, but I remember that when the cast of Jersey Shore started wearing Abercrombie and Fitch, they were sent a cease and desist by the brand to stop wearing it because it was dragging down the brand's name. Obviously, Abercrombie and Fitch is very different to Nensi Dojaka. Let's make that abundantly clear. But I wonder whether a kind of a similar ethos is applied, where even though, you know, she has this very kind of big millennial and Gen Z following, do you think that a certain distance away from things like social media is ultimately going to be beneficial to her in terms of that way? Obviously not a total distance, but like you said, you know, she probably would have had a very successful live stream had she done it on TikTok. Yeah. Hasn't necessarily, even though TikTok is one of the sponsors for the show space that she's in right now. Do you think a distance from social media is going to be beneficial for her in the long run?
I mean, who knows in the long run? I just sort of see it akin to what Bottega has done.
Okay. Would you mind elaborating on that for us?
Well, before, like, new Bottega was very much was very, very social media driven in the communication, in the strategy, in the clientele, until one day they decided, we don't want to do that anymore. We want to make it more exclusive. You know, they shut down Instagram and the Twitter and everything like that. All the shows became super, super private. The lookbooks were only given to clientele. So that's kind of what maybe she's sort of doing. And then, you know, of course, the images, when they get out, they disseminate down to, you know, the masses on social media.
And like, for example, for our clients, our client that buy Nensi Dojaka, they are quite mature and sophisticated women. So I don't think that they follow TikTok. So that's why this chic that is around Nensi is more, as for me, it's more about like shows and Instagram than for TikTok and TikTok guys.
We also just had another video a second ago. I think it was someone's Instagram story of the finale again, which would be great if we could have another look at, because that was it was a really good view of the kind of the final runway. Yeah, here we go. And actually, it's funny that, you know, we were just having a conversation because I mean, again, I'm from my vantage point here, but it does look like, you know, that kind of are women maybe from a kind of like a multitude, or at least there's like there seems to be like a slight sort of variation in terms of the body types wearing the clothes. From what we can see thus far, what do we make of this show? Do we see things we like? Do we see things that we covet in the collection?
Probably best for Alex because she's the bar.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sorry, I was admiring the final.
Yeah.
But no, Alexandra, I think, I would kind of love to know, obviously from a buying perspective, looking at kind of what we're looking at now of this latest collection, what do you think are going to be some of the pieces that people are going to want?
So actually, I see that a lot of styles are quite commercial. So they are very like Nensi Dojaka key styles, but in the same time, I know how to sell them. So there is no styles that might be difficult. So, and it's good materials and good topics. So it's all, I can like see my selection like on the mood board with all the styles that I need to create the looks for the clients.
Anybody else? Is there any, I mean, do we kind of like, do we see anything that we like? Do we see anything that we don't? Was there anything that specifically stuck out of that finale at the end?
Actually, it does look like there's a bandeau top and full brief. It looks like maybe she is trying to test some swimwear shapes. So that would be interesting to see if that develops further in the next collection.
Yeah.
It's the one that's just coming up onto the screen now. That could easily go into a cruise or swim line.
Yeah, it seems like she's trying to just sort of test the waters a bit.
So before we wrap up, it would be great to know if there were any kind of final closing thoughts on Nensi, perhaps any projections. Obviously, since she's won the LVMH Fashion Prize, it's all looking fairly promising for her. And we've been talking about swimwear, we've been talking about possible inclusions of things like knitwear to come in future collections. If there is anything that we would love to see from Nensi a season or two down the line, post LVMH, what would we be looking for?
Well, for me, it's not necessarily what she's going to do as part of the collections in the future, but I think with sort of after winning the LVMH prize, of course, her, brand awareness is going to go up like 500%. I would definitely like to see her doing a lot more like custom moments on celebrities. That's really what I want to see. I really want to see on a vast selection of different types of women.
Yes.
I think winning the prize will give her that opportunity, Louis, and I think it's going to be amazing. I think she's going to come up with some really exciting things. Wow, that looks amazing on there.
Yeah, it's amazing, the look on Dua.
Yeah, that's fab.
And also after this prize, and so the brand awareness will rising, and now Nensi needs to be very attentive to the distribution, because to not spread it on the markets, because now a lot of stores will place the request to order Nensi, but in order to keep this sheet and this and her personal style, she need to be very careful with the distribution.
I absolutely agree, Alexandra. It's crucial, but it's the kind of thing that hopefully she'll now have the opportunity to get into some other really top stores like yours and really carefully control the distribution. As you say, it's really, really important at this stage.
Yeah. That's true.
I mean, I agree. I think one of the things that would be amazing to see, especially now that she has got the funding, would be, as we've all been saying, for her to dress some incredible celebrities, and specifically some women who are fuller figured. It would also be great to see the brand and how that would look on queer bodies as well. I think that would be really interesting and really exciting. I personally would love to see Beth Ditto in full Nensi Dojaka. I think that would be one of the most beautiful things that we could possibly see. So gorgeous. Thank you so much to all of the incredible panelists for joining me today on Show Studio talking about Nensi Dojaka. For more exclusive Fashion Week coverage, be sure to visit showstudio.com and keep watching on Show Studio's YouTube, and be sure to like, comment and subscribe below, and we will see you here next time. Thank you so much.